afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I'm creating not just to bring the reality and the understandings around the day-to-day lived experience associated with complex trauma, but I really want to get into these understandings around how we can make these little changes every day to improve the quality of our lives, to understand what has changed and what has happened to us and why, so that we can demystify it and start to make the appropriate changes we need in recognizing where we need to work with it and build the resources that we will need to heal. Now, this is the next video in the adoption series, and I want to carry on a little bit when I said in the last video where when we go through a threatened and prolonged threat states, our cognitive functions, it slows down or it stops. Our higher brain functions basically turn off because our threat response, we need to react, not analyze or assess. That mechanism is part of developmental trauma to, depending upon how heightened the threat state we are in, how that severely affects our ability to learn and retain and recall what we have learned. I want to also cover the base where, because I know plenty of adoptees that are extremely successful. I know several have gone through foster care that are extremely successful academically. They've pushed through that. But what I want to bring to that awareness to where it doesn't allow or invalidate the experiences of those that we don't is, yes, they've succeeded in the push through. Yes, they are very successful, but there is a price tag. They've had to sacrifice so much of themselves along the way to get to where they wanted to get to. And that's what I want to raise in this video. Because as we get older, those parts of us that we sacrifice to get where we need to get to come and bite us in the butt. Or they come to the accountability stage where we have to recognize the impact that has had on those around us if we want them part of our lives or if they want us part of theirs. One of the components of a human response to trauma is flight. It's that drive to get away. One of the human components of a response to trauma is fight, that determination to stop something happening to us. Now, we know fight, flight, freeze. It's loads of books, there's loads of studies, there's all this stuff. But in the real world, take away the words, put it into a living context. When you go through developmental trauma, when you go through a threat response state that is prolonged, if you completely sit there in a frozen state, do not move, do not eat, or, as we know with the threat response, our digestive system shuts down. If you don't do anything, you will pass away within a few days, if not sooner. So the mere fact that we're not, there is this assumption that we must come out of this fear state naturally. I want to put forward that we don't. When you're looking at infants and young children, in those critical development stages, we don't come out of that state. We create a level of functionality within that state. Therefore, to use an example, we all know that that kid at school, that young boy, usually 5, 6 years old, that is so bullheaded and determined in one singular direction. They come from an insecure base. They've combined a flight and fight response into one response. I'm going that way, and whatever's in that way is getting out of my way, or I'm going through it. We've all seen that person. And they're more common in varying degrees. I've seen some very driven people that have gone through a base of developmental trauma, and nothing exists outside of the pursuit of that point on the horizon that they've chosen. And I believe that is fed by the mechanism of fight and flight combined. from a base of developmental trauma as a path to respond to threat, to a prolonged state of threat. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get to that point, which sounds positive. And it is to a degree if that point is attainable and within easy reach in the short term. But for most, that point in the horizon is a lot further away, which embeds a belief structure of nothing else exists bar that point. That belief, that point on the horizon. And yes, getting determined to get there is awesome. Having that achievement is awesome. But what I want to make this video about, and what I'm making this video about, is what we sacrifice on the way to get there. What parts of ourselves have we lost? What parts of ourselves did we bury, compartmentalize, box off? What parts of ourselves never developed as a result of our pursuit of that one goal, that one point on the horizon? And as I've always said through all of these videos, where this comes and bites us in the butt when we get older. Or when we've achieved that point and then we ask ourselves, well, what next? I've done that. This is where I really wish there was a lot more research and understanding done into the reality of developmental trauma. It surrounds us. In every facet of our society, there are people living it every day. But the way science is structured now, they're never going to grasp it because they need to remove the living component to make it measurable. And that's where the gap occurs, and hence why I and others make these kinds of videos, is we're trying to bring to the surface the reality of what developmental trauma creates and the states that it creates and the sacrifices that are made along the way to achieve whatever levels of success are pursued. For a lot of us, when we go through developmental trauma, early childhood trauma, that pursuit is not an academic point on the horizon. It's a pursuit of being safe. And for many of us, the only way we're safe is we're isolated. We're alone. We're not married. We don't have kids. We don't have nothing. But there's no threat. That's the price tag that I see happen so often. People that have gone through things that they've never deserved to go through. And the only way they could get a moment's peace was to remove themselves from society, to remove themselves from life, just to survive. We're surrounded by them. We live it. I live it. So many of us live it. Hence the making of these videos. As I said in several videos, this is part of my path of re-engaging after yet again losing everything I was trying to build, 15 years ago. But it's also trying to put out what I've learned and what I've understood so that those of you can get to where you want to get to quicker. And it's also to point out the gaps in a world and a society that in all open truth does not care. We who have gone through removal and placement, adoption and foster care, we are expected, as I've said so many times, to try to make right and fix and resolve what we shouldn't have ever had to do. Be mindful of what you sacrifice along the way with that determination to get to that point. Really take the time to recognize and balance that pursuit to not one point on the horizon, but an ecology, a whole place filled with different things. To value that ecology by understanding that a singular pursuit, when you've attained it, ask yourself the question, well, what's next? We are, as a human being, a biological being. We are supposed to be part of a community and a family, a group. We're designed that way. by healing attachment trauma, it helps us to be part and create that functional group, either by blood family or not. Being mindful of what we sacrifice along the way in the pursuit of our goals to get out of threat, we need to also realize that to be part of something, we need to engage, and other people need to have value in our lives, and they need to feel they have value in our lives, and they need to be part of what it is we're pursuing. And that's what I mean by what we pursue as an ecology. And for those of us to get to this point and realize what we've left behind, we need to understand that and not write ourselves off, but bring it in the world and in the way that we can, little bit by little bit. As always, I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time.